everyone, and welcome back. This is Maddie Miss, and today we are talking about my March reads for 2024. I am so excited to talk about these books with you guys today, and let's go ahead and get started with the queen of chick lit books herself, The Devil Wears Prada by Laura Weisenberger. This book was very reminiscent of the early 2000s, post 9/11, and it follows our main character named Andy. Now, Andy is an aspiring journalist who wants to work for one of the many revered newspapers in New York, but unfortunately, she can't quite get her foot in the door. So instead of just pursuing journalism, she decides to veer off the beaten path and actually take a job at Runway, working for the infamous Miranda Priestly. Now, Miranda Priestly is actually based off of Lauren Weisberger's boss in real life, the editor of Vogue. I don't know what her name is off the top of my head, but this book is basically semi-autobiographical about Lauren Weisberger's experience with the very prominent and very powerful editors and higher-ups in the fashion industry. And as you can probably imagine, this is a very cutthroat industry. They will rip your throat out if you do not give them the proper coffee order. Miranda Priestly sends Andy on wild goose chases left and right, to the point where she nearly has an anxiety attack every time she wakes up to go to work in the morning. Now, I actually watched the movie before I read this book, so I had a very different perspective because I went from seeing Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway to going to this book with the cold hard prose, and I kind of just realized that I liked the movie better, which I know is sacrilegious to say in the book community, but I feel like this book had a lot of good bones to it. Like, it had a lot of good ideas, like a social climber protagonist who just wants to get to her dream, but she will do anything she can to accomplish that, even working for a narcissist just so she can further her career, because working for Miranda Priestly is her ticket into the good life. And so it's kind of interesting to watch this evolve and seeing all these different characters. A very cult-like mentality when it comes to Miranda Priestly's workplace, where everyone, the minute they start to think anything negative about this woman, they automatically reset. And they're like, Miranda Priestly is amazing. Like, I'm sorry, are you a robot or a person? I cannot tell. And just the level of paranoia is astounding. And the way that Miranda has all these people wrapped around her little finger due to the fact that she is a talented editor and she has a big name in the fashion industry. And it was just very interesting exploring this concept because in the book, Miranda Priestly has a very happy marriage. Her husband is the complete juxtaposition to her personality. Like, he is a quintessential nice guy. He's very Midwestern in a way where he will come up to you and approach you and have an actual genuine conversation where he just wants to get to know you as a person. And you as a city girl are like, why are you talking to me? I have so many things I have to do. Like, I don't want to involve myself in small talk. But he's just a nice, genuine guy who just wants to get to know you and like understand what's going on in your life, make sure you're having a good time. And then of course Miranda's daughters, the whole Harry Potter infamous incident where she had to go and find the manuscript. In the book she does not succeed, but in the movie she does. And it was very interesting to see these differences, like they were so vast. For example, Andy's boyfriend in the book is so nice. Like, he is a quintessential nice guy, but actually nice. Like, he's not fake nice like Ross from Friends, but he's like a teacher who sincerely cares about his job and the kids to the point where he will stay overtime just to make sure that they are giving a kid the resources that they need. And he acts as like a foil to Andy because Andy is doing anything she can to get to her dream job, even working in a position for an industry that she doesn't even care about. Selling her soul to the devil, so to speak. Meanwhile, her boyfriend, who is a genuinely good and actually decent person, is kind of acting as like her due north, like her moral compass, and reminding her constantly that, hey, you are giving up so much of your life for this job that you don't even like. And the difference between the book version of her boyfriend and the movie version is that in the book, I actually like him a lot more, and he's actually right most of the time, because Andy, her best friend slash roommate, gets into a terrible car crash and she almost doesn't come back to make sure she's okay, and the boyfriend's very disappointed in her because he's actually there and he was the one in the hospital making sure her friend was okay, even though at that time they were broken up. Spoiler alert, sorry. Yeah, it was like really interesting to see that dynamic working out. And in the book you actually like see that Andy has a best friend and that She has parents, not just her dad, and not just the fake ass friends who use her to get runway fashion stuff, but like a friend who's actually in genuine need and support, and they're actually there for each other. So I feel like it's very interesting to kind of see those differences play out in the book versus the movie. But I did like the book. I was kind of disappointed with the writing style. Like, this book was very obviously written by a journalist, so if you're looking for something with more flowery prose or vibes. But despite all of that, and despite the questionable inner monologue with the main character who constantly tries to prove that she is a good person begrudgingly, just so she can prove to herself that she is better than her coworkers. Yeah, whatever. Devil Wears Prada, 3 out of 5 stars. I definitely would recommend watching the movie. All right, next up on our list is a romantic comedy called Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan. And this one is it is about our main character. She is a book narrator. So she used to be an actress before her incident where she ran into a plane propeller. She can't act anymore, so she decided to take up book narrating. Not only she's very talented, she is also widely renowned, and there are many people who are trying to get her to read with this super amazing guy called Brock Midnight. Yes, I remember the love interest name more than the main characters. It is so much more memorable in the worst way. You know, where it's like Ron Bergeron from Anchorman. Like, it's so catchy and so snappy because it's such a terrible name. And Sawani doesn't want to do it because she doesn't like reading romance, because after her accident, she became kind of jaded to the world. They kind of strike up this internet romance where they start emailing back and forth because they were actually contracted to work together on this romance novel that Sawani now wants to do because her grandmother is about to lose her spot in a nursing home and she has dementia. So Sawani wants to make sure that her grandmother is taken care of, and apparently being a romance narrator pays well, so she wants to do it for her grandmother. And then she starts working with Brock Midnight, and even though they're not actually working together in the same room, they are digitally sending in their episodes to their editors for them to put together. And interestingly enough, Sawani has this kind of the one who got away guy named Nick, who they had a one-night stand. It was magical. It was the best night of her life, and then it just disintegrated into nothing. And it turns out that, dun dun dun, Brock Midnight is that guy that she had this amazing one-night romance with, and the story just unpacks from there. And even though this book, I went into it knowing I wouldn't really like it because, again, I tend not to like contemporary romance novels. And some of you may be wondering, oh, why do you keep reading them if you hate them? And it's because I apparently am a masochist, but also because sometimes I'm proven wrong. And this was not the book that did that for me. The character of Sawani is very much insufferable. It just came across as childish, and I just couldn't root for the characters. I couldn't sympathize with Sawani, even though she was trying so hard to help her grandmother the worst. And it's so funny because her father is the one who's the narcissist. He was the victim at all times, and I think some of that trickled down to Sawani, where she again took up this mantle of, I'm the victim, everyone hates me or can see it, therefore I must punish everyone for my insecurities. And I can't get behind characters like that. That's not healthy. That's not how adulthood works. Stop that. Go to therapy, figure your shit out, and then come back and let us know how you are. And I just didn't like how the conflict was wrapped up like super quickly just because the love interest just thought she was so pretty, or he just wanted to have sex. Like, I can't really tell why this guy would continue to hang out with a person who constantly yells at him for nothing. But anyway, what do I know? Thank You for Listening by Julie Whelan, 1 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have my second Ali Hazelwood read of 2024, and that is The Love Hypothesis. And it is, as many of you probably know, the Raylo fan fiction that pushed 1,000 BookTok accounts into existence. So many videos were made about this book, so many reels. I've seen Instagram posts about this. Everyone has basically covered Ali Hazelwood as an author, and I will say that this woman has a type, and she has a very distinct formula from which she never diverts from, but it's working for her, so who am I to judge? So anyway, Love Hypothesis is all about this girl named Olive, another woman in STEM, who fake dates her kind of boss, professor at her university, and his name is Adam, like Adam Driver, who plays Kylo Ren in Star Wars. Very obvious, but whatever, we'll take it. So essentially these two are forced into this fake dating trope because Olive's best friend wants to date her ex, and her best friend Amma isn't fully convinced that her friend is completely over Jeffrey. So Olive has to do the most to convince her friend that she is not still in love with this guy, so much so that she decides to kind of assault her professor by forcing a kiss on him without his consent. But whatever, the book makes a joke about it, so obviously it's not such a big deal. Obviously this gets snowballed into this fake dating trope where everyone sees her as, oh, the evil Dr. Adam Carlson's girlfriend. Because of course, every guy in STEM is a grade A douchebag. So both these guys ruin people's lives, and then they end up with the like wilting wallflower girl who just wants to make them better, who is trying her best to become a serious scientist and have her own research lab and conduct her own experiments. Like, it's again very similar, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it just kind of gets tired the second time you read it. You just kind of feel like, did I just read the same book with a different cover? That's what happened, right? Yeah, that's what happened. I will admit to you, I was reading this book and I had to stop and walk away because I could not take another freaking moment of this woman talking about how big the guys are and how small and delicate the girls are. It's got on my nerves. Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, I gave it 2 stars for the very we're on your side Me Too movement moment at the end. But that was me being nice. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be reading any more of Ali Hazelwood's books in the future because I cannot stand reading any more about these huge guys who like to shack up with very small girls, but you never know. Next up on our list, we have a book I actually enjoyed, and that was Legendary by Stephanie Garber. And this book is a sequel to Caraval, a book all about this girl named Scarlett who loses her sister Tella on this island of Caraval that is basically put together by this guy named Legend, who creates this kind of fantastical, whimsical, magical game. And you're not sure the people you meet, like, are they an actor? Are they working for Legend? Are they lying to you? Are they telling the truth? You have no idea, because it could be all part of the game. And the first book, Scarlett finds her sister Tella, and it turns out that she actually died and came back to life. But in this book, it's in Tella's point of view. Next up, we have Discovery Witches by Deborah Harkness, and this book is a historical fiction fantasy. So this book follows Diana Bishop, a professor at Oxford who studies alchemy, who is secretly a witch. She exists in a world where vampires, demons, and humans exist alongside witches, but the more magical community stays undercover, and they do not want to present themselves or reveal themselves to the humans because the world would descend into chaos, essentially. And while she is researching, she stumbles across this enchanted manuscript, and this book is basically supposed to be the mecca of all knowledge of magical creatures. It's supposed to talk about how they were created / conceived and how they can continue their lineage. Because in this world, vampires are actually endangered species because the newer vampires don't know how to reproduce or create new vampires, and demons are getting even more erratic, like they're basically just flying off the walls, essentially revealing magical beings, and witches are coming out and actually killing other witches because they're either too powerful or pose a threat. And Diana Bishop comes across Matthew Claremont, a very powerful, very old vampire who is also looking for Ashmole 62. And they are both trying to find this manuscript that Diana misplaced, because Matthew Claremont is researching how to keep the vampire lines going, because again, vampires are endangered, and Diana wants to find it because she feels magic within it. Now, Diana very much has repressed her magical ability. She doesn't want to be a witch because her parents died, and then she finds out later that witches were actually the cause of that. So she has a very conflicted relationship with magic, even though she is actually supposed to be the most powerful witch of her time. I like the fact that Deborah Harkness attributed a lot of science to these magical creatures and talked about like how DNA worked, how they could possibly actually survive in real life, and talking about different types of magic and different types of beings. And I like the aspect of the romance because I feel like for me personally, romance in books like this, like romantasy books, so to speak, that's the least interesting part to me. But this love story actually roped me in really quickly. It's basically like the adult version of Twilight. That's how I've heard people describe it, and I definitely agree. Because Matthew Claremont definitely has very similar traits to Edward, where he is very controlling, very possessive. His shortcomings are definitely not as prominent or as in your face as Edward Cullen's are. Like Matthew Claremont is very much the evolved vampire who is very much focused on not only protecting Diana, but also on possibly furthering his own bloodline. So I definitely recommend this book. I started watching this show and I'm super excited because I really like the actors in it and it looks amazing, and this was the 1 5-star read that I have of this month and I love it. I gush about it all the time. I tell people to read it. I will say though that I started this book in 2022 and I finally finished it in March of 2024. So I will say this book does take a while. It's like 500 pages long, and Deborah Harkness is a masterclass of a writer, but the thing is, like with her writing voice, like she goes into every single minute little detail and is fantastic and so well written and is so lyrical, but it's very slow. There are so many other great qualities about this book that made me kind of ignore those. So 100%, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, definitely recommend. It's a great book, especially if you're a fan of Twilight. I highly recommend this for you. Discovery Witches by Deborah Harkness, 5 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have a book that took the publishing world by storm. That's Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. And this book is basically a satire that calls out the publishing industry for all of its very corrupt and very superficial practices. So this book follows a main character named June. Now, June is a writer. And even though she is a published author, she's not as successful as her good friend, Athena. Now, Athena is the writer who got the 6-figure advance on her debut novel. She has articles in the New York Times with airbrush photos making her look magnificent. She gets invited to all these amazing soirees and parties. And June is very much resentful and jealous of Athena, even though they're friends. And one day, as the two of them are hanging out, they're eating pancakes, and Athena chokes on a piece of pancake, and then she dies. Yes, very cartoonish in death. But again, this is satire, so I understand where the author is coming from. As you can imagine, June is very much like flabbergasted by this death. She did not see it coming. She is so shocked. She can steal her friend's manuscript and then pass it off as her own. So this book basically explores the double standard of the publishing community, where they are so focused on diversity, but even then, when a book about Chinese labor workers in World War II falls into their laps, written by a presumably white author, they're very quick to whitewash it and focus more on the colonizers in the story rather than the actual victims of that trauma themselves. And it's very interesting to watch how June constantly tries to grapple with her identity, not only as an author, but also as a woman who proclaims she's not racist. This woman thinks that she is an ally, but it's very easy to see that she is not. And how June goes through so many lengths just to prove that this is her manuscript and not Athena's, even though there are so many different independent parties that are trying to prove her wrong. And the ending was so gripping. It was like a perfect, like, nice tight bow. You just wrapped up the whole thing perfectly, and I love the ending because, again, justice was served, and I was happy about that. I will say the one thing about this book is that the main character is so irritating, and I did have to read my Audible book at a very fast speed just to get through it because it was painful. It was painful at a certain point to not have a character that I could root for,
except for the people who are trying to catch our main character in the act. But I think it really speaks volumes to where we see the publishing industry as a whole, not just as a bunch of superficial marketers who are just trying to find the next best thing and just keep the ball rolling, but also just how people view certain people in power or in privilege. Like, oh, Juniper found herself to be the victim even though she is a white woman because she believes that, oh, I'm not diverse enough, therefore no one cares about my story, which is very much not how that works, but I digress. Again, she is not the true protagonist. I would argue that her friend Athena is the true protagonist of the story, but very nice, easy read that you could just enjoy, sit back, relax, and not have to turn your brain on for too much of it. For me personally, I feel like R.F. Kuang fed her readers too much of what they needed to know and not really rely on subtlety or nuance, and she didn't really trust her readers to do most of the hard work for her, and I feel like that kind of aided to her very, I would say, weak writing style. I don't know. I've heard so many good things about R.F. Kuang as a writer, and this was my first book of hers that I read, and I feel like it was kind of disappointing in many ways, but it was very interesting in certain parts too. I just switched genres from realistic fiction to mystery thriller towards the end, which I kind of liked and I appreciated. But anyway, if you're looking for a satirical book that is based off of the very shallow and very much late stage capitalistic publishing industry that we have nowadays, that focuses more on quantity over quality. Very much focuses on getting a book out no matter who or where it comes from without really divulging into the meat of it. This book basically calls out the superficiality of the publishing industry, which I find to be really fascinating, especially considering that I'm an aspiring author myself. And this book kind of made me not want to publish a book ever. Kind of weird how that works, but I wish I could say the same about this next entry, Halloween / A Haunting in Venice by Agatha Christie. Now, I actually watched the movie before I read this book, and it was a decent movie filled with a very stacked cast. We had Tina Fey in it, which kind of did take me out of the movie a little bit, but I enjoyed it all the same. We also had Christian Grey. We had the mom from Crazy Rich Asians. Just kidding, I actually put up their names in this video because they deserve all the credit because they did a great job in this movie. And I was really excited to read the book version of this movie, which sounds very backwards to say because it's really the other way around. And I was excited to do that because every other Agatha Christie book I've ever read was very similar to the movie that I watched beforehand. And then when I read the book, I realized, oh, this is incredibly different. Like, not even the same story at all. Those of you who are unfamiliar with this book, Hallowe'en Party / A Haunting in Venice is basically the 41st book in the Hercule Poirot series written by Agatha Christie following this detective named Hercule Poirot, who is essentially recruited by his friend, the writer, Miss Oliver, after she attends a Halloween party in Venice in which a young, very boisterous, very annoying young girl is drowned in an apple bobbing bucket. And as Hercule Poirot is investigating this story, he is asking, okay, why was this girl murdered? And it was because she revealed that she had seen a murder, which, spoiler alert, turned out to be a lie. It was actually her trying to impress her friends because she actually heard someone else in her life, one of her friends, admit that she had seen a murder. And then Joyce, the girl who was murdered, she revealed that she had seen the murder when in reality it was actually her friend. And then the murderer was tracking down the real witness to this murder. I wasn't really intrigued with the book entirely after I realized that it was nothing like the movie, and I kind of dissociated for a bit and I was just skimming through it just to get my reading goal. But then at the very end I was like, oh, this is very interesting because all the puzzle pieces were coming together. It was becoming a full picture and it became so much more intriguing, and I just wish I would have liked this book way more. There was just, I don't know, it just, again, Agatha Christie's books were written decades ago, so obviously some of the things that they mention in them are very outdated. The R word is mentioned more than once in this book in regards to another murder victim, and there's a lot of discussion between Hercule Poirot and the teacher and his assistant constable at the time whether or not Joyce was assaulted before she was murdered. I just don't like my murderer with the side of child molestation. It's just not for me. I don't appreciate it. It's not that I don't understand that these things happen. I just don't want it like mentioned multiple times in a mystery when it's very clear that this was not the case at all. I did not appreciate it because it added no substance to the story at all. It was just basically there for shock value, and I think that was the main reason why I rated this a 2 out of 5 stars. The movie is very enjoyable, and the actors did a very good job. It's definitely not like, you know, an Oscar nominee movie, but it's just a very good, like, cut and dry murder mystery. Like, it gets its job done. You see a lot of very fun actors in it. They do a great job of having the story play out. It's a very different circumstance. It actually involves supernatural horror, and that was actually very interesting to me. And this book, I felt like it was kind of a tease because it hinted at the idea of a ghost kind of haunting them, and that wasn't it. We never got to see a ghost because the ghost wasn't actually real, and it was just false advertising, and I feel lied to. Halloween Party / Haunting of Venice, 2 out of 5 stars. One of those stars is, I don't fucking know what the title of this book is, and no one seems to want to tell me. Next up on our list, we have the Ex Hex by Erin Sterling, and this book, I picked it up because I love a good witchy book. I love practical magic. I love the very irregular society of irregular witches. That very long ass title, but I love that book. I love anything witchy. I love anything like with very strong female characters who can conjure spells, create magic, brew potions. I love that stuff. And as much as I wanted this to be like another Hocus Pocus situation, it was very much a contemporary romance mixed with fantasy. And if you're unfamiliar with this book, because again, it is, I wouldn't say it's very popular. I saw it pop up on my Libby app and I thought it was cute. I liked the title. And I was like, you know what? I'll take it. I'll read another contemporary romance book. Why not? Like, might as well go for it. And I borrowed it from my library and I saw like the summary of it and it really intrigued me. So this young woman named Vivian, she is a witch because obviously, and she gets dumped by like the town heartthrob, basically like the golden boy of her small town. Like it's basically like his dad owns the town somehow, and it's like an ancestral thing where like his family basically founded the town and he's like the town golden boy. I don't remember the name of the small town because it doesn't matter. And he breaks her heart. They have this whirlwind romance, and it turns out that his father arranged for him to get married to someone else, a different witch. And Vivian is understandably heartbroken. She really fell for this guy. She thought they were going to have a happily ever after, and he ended up being betrothed to someone else. So what's a witchy girl got to do but curse her ex? So every time he enters the town, chaos ensues, and that's exactly what happens 9 years later. I hate time jumps. I hate them. Here's a reason why I don't like time jumps, especially when it comes to contemporary romances, because it kind of feels like, I hate to say it this way because I don't want to sound degrading, but kind of like pathetic. Like you knew this person 9 years ago. You've had 9 years to find someone else and you were teenagers at the time. Like I understand there's a lot of people who married the high school sweethearts. It's very sweet. I'm very happy that it worked out for them. But a lot of the times, like, you really hang on to a pipe dream there. Like that person that you knew 9 years ago is not the person that exists today. And I think that kind of took me out of the book a little bit. I think I would have understood if it was like 3 years later or like 2 years later, like something a little bit closer together when it comes to the space-time continuum. I thought 9 years was way too long of a time for these people to be like harboring feelings for each other. I feel like 2 or 3 years would have been just fine. That's like the perfect cutoff before people are like, you need to get over this. You need to get over this fast. So Vivian curses Reese, and Reese comes back to celebrate their town's like 100th anniversary, and he's supposed to be there to be like the figurehead of it all, like, you know, the diplomat, the politician who just cuts the ribbon, takes a picture, and then goes home. And the moment he gets there, every conceivable thing goes wrong. He almost gets crushed by a statue. Like his car breaks down, he nearly gets run over. This is like agoraphobia manifested into a book. And basically this guy is getting shit on and he has no idea what's going on. He is also a witch, by the way, because in this world, men and women are witches, but we're not going to talk about that. It is very clear to Reese that the universe is against him for some reason. He has no idea why. He runs into his ex Vivian because she almost runs over him with her car because, again, the Ex Hex. And she sees him there. She's like, what are you doing here? She's super mad because, again, she's not completely over him. And he's like, whoa, this is crazy that you're here. Vivian confesses that she did, in fact, incite the Ex Hex onto him, that he is cursed. And then they just basically spend the rest of the book trying to break this curse. And I really like this story to a certain extent. I really like the fantasy aspect of it because the lore behind it, like the curses and the magic, I thought was really interesting. And I liked how it's kind of like Wednesday, where like in the storyline, like what you think is really going on is not really what's going on. Like there's a secret underlying aspect of this book. And I really liked it because you think that, oh, Vivian cursed him and that's why all these terrible things are happening, but it's not just her curse, it's another curse. There's so many plot twists and it's so cool, like seeing these things unravel. I will say one of the main reasons why I didn't score this book any more than a 2 out of 5 stars is because this author was all tell and don't show. When I first started reading this book, I was under the impression that we were going to see this guy getting cursed or all the terrible things that were going to happen to him, but no, we were told what happened to him. We did not get to see it in like the typical romantic comedy kind of way. It was just like not interesting to me. And also Vivian, the main character, was like super Mary Sue when it came to her powers. Like she never practices magic, and all of a sudden she can perform very powerful, very intense spells, and she's like a natural at it. And that part kind of annoyed me as well. And just not actually seeing what was going on, and just the language is a very modern language because, again, this takes place in present day. You get a lot of very vulgar language, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. I just kind of found it distracting for the rest of the book because you have these people throwing the F-bomb around, and I'm just like, I don't care. Just figure out who's actually causing the curse on this town, man. Like, I do not care at all. And I don't know, it's kind of frustrating. But overall, I will say this is a very enjoyable read for spooky season. If you're looking for a very junk food for the brain, no thoughts required kind of book, this is the one for you. The Ex Hex by Erin Sterling, 2 out of 5 stars. This next book, I feel almost guilty for reading this. You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. Little backstory. My mother gave me this book with every good intention she had in her heart. It wasn't with malicious intent. It wasn't to drive me crazy. It wasn't to even just send a message. It was just to be like, hey, my daughter likes reading. Other people seem to like this book. I'm going to give her this book in the hopes that she will like this book too and make me feel good about myself as a gift giver. And Mom, if you're watching this, I love you. But I hated this book with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. And I don't blame her at all. Like, these kind of books are literally written for women who look like me, who live in the Midwest in suburban America, who are just basically like trapped inside their houses because it's snowing in April for some godforsaken reason. I do not condone book burning in the slightest, because it is demonstratively, magnanimously harmful to society to censor books in a way that you do not agree with. But I will say, if I could throw a party and burn this book, I would do it. Because I don't think I'll ever be the same again with all the mental stress I had reading this book. And I cannot with self-help. I cannot. No, I have literally told myself, you are not reading another self-help book for as long as you live, because they do this to you every single time, every single time. I should probably have the same boundary when it comes to contemporary romance, because regardless of how many I read, they all just make me so angry. So You're a Badass is basically a bunch of Pinterest quotes shoved together in a book, and made to be like a motivational advice written by a woman who's never suffered a day in her life, talking about how people who suffer should get over themselves, stop being little pussies, and just get up and do the thing that they always wanted to do. Now, I understand the sentiment to a certain extent, but considering the source, I am just enraged. I am utterly enraged. I was listening to this book through Audible at 2.5 speed because I was so desperate to end it. And even then, this book on 2.5 speed on Audible is literally 3 hours long. And I had to pause it, sleep on it, because I was so enraged at the utter and complete heaping bullshit this woman was trying to stuff down my throat. I've never felt so upset in my entire life while reading a book suggested by my mother. So Genesis Zero is like the poster child of law of attraction and manifestation, two things that I hate and I think are complete and utter bullshit that are used to wrangle women in, to make them feel inadequate and gaslight them into ignoring their problems, their actual serious problems like their abusive boyfriend, their shitty parents, and just basically force them to soldier through and blame themselves for all the problems that are happening in their lives. Like, law of attraction is basically every time some shitty thing happens to you in your life, it's your fault. Something you did caused that. Now, you can kind of argue that that's also karma in a certain way, but law of attraction is even more severe. Like, if you have ever read the book The Secret basically suggests and implies and strongly insinuates that 9/11 was caused because everyone in the World Trade Center had very negative thoughts. Could you imagine if you lost someone in the 9/11 accident and someone came up to you and they were like, you know why your friend, your father, your mother, your sister, your brother died in that accident? It's because some part of them wanted that to happen. It's their fault. It's something that they thought or felt or wanted. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? No place on earth would be safe for these people. And this entire book, not one scientific actual fucking fact was found. The entire book. And it was like almost kind of insulting to me as a reader. I'm like, you're not even gonna try to indulge me with an actual statistic or fact. Like, yeah, she quoted other people who actually benefited society. She was perfectly happy to take their ideas. God forbid she had anything actually positive to contribute to this conversation. She went on this whole argument how like actual successful people don't care about other people think, which is first of all incredibly insensitive. Like, we're human beings, of course we care about what people think. Like, that's the whole part of us. We are programmed as social human beings to want to have a community. We care about other people think because we need our crew to survive. Like, we will literally die of loneliness if we do not have people in our circles. And I think it's incredibly insensitive, but also very short-sighted for her to be like, oh, Marilyn Monroe didn't care about what people thought. I'm like, well, I mean, she kind of did. Like, she wasn't a natural blonde and she got plastic surgery. And this is not me taking shots at Marilyn Monroe. This is me taking shots at Genesis Zero for not doing sincere research. Like, Marilyn Monroe, love her, adore her. Incredible actress, decent person, tragic backstory. Like, if you don't have anything new or original or interesting to say about people, don't say it. Especially not about Marilyn Monroe, who has had enough people comment about her life, and it's kind of getting sickening and sociopathic at this point. Honestly. Yeah, if you ever want to lose brain cells while you're reading a book, please, for the love of God, read You Are a Badass by Genesis Zero, and you can feel yourself slowly lose sanity as you read every single painstaking page that this woman wrote while on a vacation to India. Enjoy! If I could give a book a -1 star of my whole year, it would be this book. I have a personal vendetta against this book. I will literally hit this book out of your hand if I ever see you holding it. Save yourself the hardship, save yourself the sleepless nights, save yourself the mental sanity. And for the love of God, just read this next book that I actually enjoyed. That is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, the only self-help book not written by a professional like a doctor or therapist or psychotherapist that is actually helpful. I read this book and I was inspired. Like, that sounds like really cheesy to say. I actually liked it, and it sounds cheesy because like it's a book about organizing your life, and it sounds like super nerdy and like super OCD, but it's so calming. It's so aesthetically pleasing. I felt like after reading this book, I had achieved nirvana at a certain point. I actually enjoyed it, and the tips that she actually gave me, I could see myself doing. Like, I was like, okay, in the foreseeable future, I'm going to go home and just cleanse my house of clothes, donate them, give them to people who actually will want them and treasure them, and just free myself of all of these earthly possessions that I actually don't need. After reading this book, I went home and I discarded quite a few things after I read it because I'm like, what is this doing here? I don't need this. Throw it out. It was a spiritual experience. Which again sounds so corny, but it's actually pretty good. It sounds so silly being inspired by a book that is just supposed to help you just clean your house, but really is a lot more than that. The whole point of this book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, is based on an argument that Marie Kondo makes in the very beginning of this book, is that you can help or tidy up other aspects of your life after you tidy up your house and your space, and just declutter all of the crap that you've accumulated after all these years, and just get rid of it, and just the freedom in that. And I feel that like every time I cleanse, every time I clean my house or tidy it up or just empty out my closet and just get rid of things that I've never worn or will never wear, or like kid myself into thinking that I will eventually wear this to a party that will never happen. You put things up in your closet, you're like, I don't find joy, and you throw it away. When you're throwing these things away, don't forget to thank these items of clothing as you're throwing them away. Like, thank you for the role that you had in my life. Casting them away. And I thought that was kind of funny. A little too kooky for me, but whatever. I'll talk to inanimate objects all day long, including my phone that I'm recording this on. So who am I to judge? The one reason why I didn't score this like a 5-star as opposed to a 4-star was mainly because I didn't like one line, and I know this sounds so nitpicky. Marie Kondo says that she would go back in time to her past self who valued, I don't remember what she valued. She just valued something over what future Marie Kondo knew to be true, and she wanted to, quote unquote, smack herself for thinking what she thought as a child, as a teenager. And I don't like that. I don't like the, well, implication that you should smack children, first of all, but also, second of all, self-love and a little grace. Like, you are a teenager. It's okay for you to make mistakes and think stupid things and do stupid things because you're still figuring shit out. You're literally a fetus. Another part I found like a little too funny. When Marie Kondo recalled the time where she got a new phone and she had to get rid of her old one. And she was texting her old phone with her new phone, like, thank you so much for all the things that you've done in my life. Like, again, talking to inanimate objects. And that was a little too much for me. Like, the fact that she went back and forth between the new phone and the old phone, and then eventually her old phone died, and she was like, that was a sign that it was the right time for me to part with this phone. And I was like, you need to take a nap. Like, this is out of my jurisdiction. You lost me there. I can't do it. But everything else I found to be really inspirational. Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. 4 stars. Definitely the better self-help book that I've read this year. All right, that is it for March of 2024 reads. I read 10 books overall. The average was 2.65 out of 5 stars. Again, a bit of a painful month. We had quite a few highs and a lot of lows, but despite that, I feel like this month I genuinely enjoyed most of the books that I've read. I could actually glean a few very positive things from them as opposed to like February or January, but I had some books that were complete disappointments. I went into this month knowing that certain books that I was reading were not going to be favorites for me, which again is always good to steel yourself against those disappointments. I feel like I'm finally getting into a niche where I can get to a point where I know what books I will like, what books I will enjoy and cherish for all time, what books that I will throw away / Marie Kondo out of my house. Thank you again for watching this video. Like and leave a comment down below. Let me know what books you read in March, what books you enjoyed. Did you read any of the books I read this month? Do you agree with my ratings? Do you have them on your TBR for this year? And if so, let me know. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay sexy and keep reading. Have a great day.